Birthdays, so we can like learn about the earth and help it, and don't litter and pick up things that pollute the earth.
Oh, he's not so dumb, yeah.
A few moments of pain and unpleasantness are nothing compared to facing a life-threatening illness with your child. Low immunization rates nationwide have caused many health departments to become concerned, including here in the Northland.
In the United States overall, there's a need for improvement in the immunization rates. I believe our county is doing a pretty good job.
Approximately 1 in 4 newborn to 2-year-old children in the U.S. is not properly immunized against infectious and potentially deadly diseases such as measles and whooping cough.
Anytime when you have a disease, it's not simply having a fever, a rash, being sick for a few days. Children can become hearing impaired, and other long-term related health problems can result.
Because of the low immunization rates throughout the country, they have declared this week National Infant Immunization Week. Healthcare providers are hoping that by getting the message out, people will get the proper vaccination and those rates will increase.
Measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis, diphtheria, tetanus are all diseases that are still around us. And if our rates take a nosedive and go down, we're going to see more and more incidents of these diseases.
Health officials hope that by raising the awareness about childhood immunizations, children everywhere will live happy, healthy lives. In Superior, Jody Grayson, News 6.
Yeah. Okay. And I also
Do you mean to tell me the people of this neighborhood have seen my children running around in curtains?
Oh, yeah.
It was a beautiful day on the UMD campus. All day long, students were out and about taking advantage of the long-awaited warm-up. Some students moved their small study groups outside, while some classes turned in their desks and blackboards for the grass and the blue sky. Others just forgot about their upcoming tests and enjoyed the other great things about being a college student, having fun. As soon as class was over, many students traded in their books for tennis rackets and baseball gloves. And if they weren't playing a game this afternoon, they were watching one. The look around campus has been changed. Shorts and tank tops replace jeans and heavy coats. And in the parking lot, four-wheel drive trucks and winter beaters have been replaced by two-wheelers.
And then any of these toys, or dolls, or jacks.
Students from Chester Park Elementary spent the day proving that it is indeed better to give than to receive, even if the only thing they get in return is a feeling of satisfaction.
Letters, just to let them know they're thinking about them, to support them, and just to share a little bit of what they have.
Because they don't have much stuff left.
So this is what the boxes are going to look like when we fill them.
But first, they had to find a way to get things that they could send.
Remember when we sent the notes home and we asked everyone to bring items, and I brought the items in here and you sorted them out?
I'm just going to get a ruler.
And so the project began.
Is put your letter in the box, and then you go over to the tables and follow right down the list. You get to pick either a doll or some jacks or Play-Doh, and then you get to pick out a hair ribbon too.
So a toothbrush, so the tooth can stay clean, teeth can stay clean, and school things so they can do activities in school and stuff.
And then, the moment they'd all been working for.
That's the last of the list.
But there was still one big hurdle left to cross. After all, getting those overstuffed boxes to close is never easy.
If we get this one smaller, I think it'll work.
Finally, the fruits of their labor are ready. Gifts of love to help friends who they'll probably never meet.
Dear friend, my name is Brian. I am 8 years old. I live in USA. I have 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 1 rat. I helped fill this box. Your friend Brian.
In Duluth, Craig Sleeman, News 6.
Keeping Furbies in my office under my desk, and I put them out just these days.
Display. Literally hundreds of items. We've put them up on speed racks here. They're shrink wrapped for security. No employee is allowed to even look at these, much alone open them and check out the merchandise before the public does.
Who's going to show up to Toys R Us at midnight?
I went over at Cup Food the other night for the first time.
Star Wars reader. I sure hope he charged her for using that. This makes me wonder though. Gosh, she's only like early 40s. Skinny coat all the way down there.
I think we need to protect rifle ranges, but we should not. Duluth gets $1 per student increase in the House Republican bill. Also, if you look at the rest of the range, most of them also did very poorly. Compare that with some of the suburban districts, and I don't have Minneapolis and St. Paul. Minneapolis and St. Paul do very well in this bill. So the bill is aimed to attack northeastern Minnesota. There's just no question about it.
Things were peaceful at Toys R Us just before midnight last night. Employees were stocking their shelves full of new Star Wars merchandise, while outside fans were patiently lined up at the door chatting about Star Wars.
I seen Empire Strikes Back when it came out in 1980, and that was the first movie I ever seen. And from there, it just caught on, you know. And from there, I've been a Star Wars fan ever since, collecting toys and seen the trilogy probably about 500 times.
And what exactly they'd find just beyond those locked glass doors. At 12:01 this morning, their waiting stopped. Today marked the first day new Star Wars Episode 1 merchandise could go on sale, with Toys R Us leading the pack just after midnight this morning. Others quickly followed. Target had their displays ready at 8 a.m. with a whole aisle devoted to the classic battle of good versus evil on everything from inflatable chairs to pillowcases. And don't forget the books. And books, and books, and books. Barnes & Noble employees were up to the wee hours of the morning building these complex 3D displays for the over 50 different Phantom Menace-related titles available today. But even amongst all this Star Wars hoopla, there were a few from what some fans would consider the other side of the Force.
I just think it's crazy how people follow it like this and how many people showed up to buy all this stuff. And I'm just not a Star Wars fan. I guess I just don't understand the hype.
But even if you don't understand it, you've got to admit, it's certainly going to be hard to avoid over the next several weeks. For News 6, I'm Keith Merler.
A forest ranger on routine fire patrol reported smoke coming from an area 10 miles northeast of Iron River. Minutes later, the fire was rapidly spreading out of control.
And you can see in the area where it started, the way it burned sort of around that area, that the winds were swirling around that area. And then finally it took off, fed by the winds, I think, out of the south.
The blaze quickly moved through 100 acres of 5-year-old regenerating jack pines and aspen, then jumped to the hardwoods and along the ridge.
Crept along the ridge, and then farther down there's an underground gas pipeline, Great Lakes gas pipeline, that it just started to slop over that, and that's when the air tanker drop was called in.
The tanker knocked down the fire long enough for bulldozers to come in and put in fire lines.
The last time Jesse Ventura went to the Far East, he was wearing spandex and sequins and spent much of his time bouncing off the ropes of a Tokyo wrestling ring. This time, it will be very different. When the governor goes back to Japan this fall, he goes as an honored guest, a head of state, and a media star so hot the photo and interview requests never wane.
I'm going to be a salesman, looking to promote trade and tourism, and I might even rekindle some contacts from my good old days. I wrestled there a couple times.
And they remember. Ventura was the special guest at the Japanese ambassador's residence in February while he was in Washington. The ambassador said then that Ventura's election had been big news in Japan.
His election, being elected as governor, was also reported in my country. So that people will be interested to see him.
The trip, set from November 1st to the 10th, is scheduled to begin and end in Tokyo, with a side trip to Osaka and perhaps a third city if time permits. The governor will divide his schedule between making business contacts and promoting tourism, trying to add to the already 60,000 Japanese tourists who visit Minnesota each year.
Many of them have been to the East Coast or the West Coast and are looking for other opportunities. And often we hear they're looking to see the real America, which is what Minnesota has to offer.
But the Japanese can stay home for the best sightseeing next autumn. Ventura plans to show up at 2 exhibition Timberwolves games, see a wrestling match with his old Japanese tag team partner, and generally just cause a stir wherever he goes. He says his against-all-odds victory has intrigued the Japanese.
Japan is following me personally very closely because their politics over there tends to be a two-party system, and they're very interested how a third-party candidate like myself can prevail and win.
I have nothing but respect for those bears.
There aren't many people alive who could describe the smell of a bear's breath.
I guess we're the luckiest people in the world and we're the unluckiest people in the world.
The only thing I can remember is looking down his throat.
Then again, there aren't a lot of people who could truthfully tell a story like the one Dan and Candace Spring can.
We'll always cherish the little Josie. Josie always asked to go out about 10 o'clock before we went to bed.
It happened Monday night when Dan let out the family's toy poodle, Josie.
I thought it was a big black dog that's been around here. So I hollered, "Hey, you know, get off of her." And I hollered, "My God, he's killing Josie." And then he flipped her. He just flipped her like she was nothing.
And at that point, I saw black fur right up next to our French doors.
He was on me and he slammed me right up against the door.
About that far. With his mouth wide open, all I saw was teeth and tongue.
I saw the pink of his throat, and I thought, my God, it's not a dog, it's a bear.
Imagine a 300-pound black bear like this one on top of you, angry that you'd tried to take away its meal.
I got 6 or 7 puncture wounds. 2 of them are pretty close to the bone.
He finally left when he picked our little dog up and took her off.
The bear and the poodle disappeared. Odds are with the bear on that one.
We miss her. We miss her a lot.
There's a bear paw right there.
Now the DNR has set up traps loaded with donuts in the Springs backyard.
And it trips the door behind him, and he's trapped.
With hopes of capturing one mean bear.
I'm gonna miss my dog, but I'm just glad I'm alive.
But what's nice about this is everybody can see everything. Well, we knew that we had to put the standby antenna up on another tower because our tower was damaged and we didn't know whether it was safe to work around it. Now what's going to happen is our tower is going to be temporarily repaired so that we can move our standby transmitter back to our own tower, and that will improve our signal coverage in the entire area.
Some people, well, they had big loads because I went to help my mom and a carrier, and I had 2 bags that were really full. I could barely hold them, so I had to give them to my mom.
You must have got empty ones. You got most of them. I'm ready. That's it. That's it. Thank you very much.
It's been a learning experience. Oh. You learn to know the cries and the faces of the baby. And we still have a long ways to go. I've never assembled more things than I have in the past month or read more instructions, because you have to make sure that you read them all correctly and, you know, filled in so many consumer recall notices and things like that.
person. You grow up, are you gonna work at KBJR? Catch up on all the dirt and dish. So where do you think this will appear in the show? In the first. Okay. Hopefully. Let's send him to VCR. We go back and forth. He lives in Duluth. I'd love to. We catch up on all the dirt.
Even before Minnesota was a state, Democrats and Republicans were fighting it out.
But I'm a Republican, proud to say, and we have our own ideas on what Minnesota should look like.
And not much has changed.
They talked about the dangers of partisan politics, even in 1858, and saying how it's going to ruin the state.
141 years later, the descendants of those pioneer politicians are still at odds. And with the session due to adjourn a week from today, serious trouble is brewing. Despite hours of closed-door meetings, the two sides cannot agree on the entire budget package.
Not going to fly. It's just simply not going to go.
But they are especially at odds over tax cuts. Here's the problem. If Republicans cut 0.5% off each income bracket, including the wealthiest taxpayers, DFLers say it'll cost too much and steal money away from other items, including $100 million for education spending. But it is that top bracket break DFLers object to most.
I was reading this weekend some of the CEOs of some of the largest Minnesota companies, income with their stock options of $20 million. Can you imagine the kinds of tax cuts they would get under the House Republican plan?
And then there's the rest of the goodies. The governor wants $60 million for light rail, millions to cut license tab fees, and money for property tax reform. After a late afternoon visit with Ventura, a weary House Speaker emerged to say this.
We were unable to reach an agreement at this point for the overall target and budget numbers. Unable to do so, which is extremely disappointing.
But Roger Moe, a 30-year veteran of Capitol intrigue, insists he's undaunted.
We're ready to rock and roll.
This packet is on and all others in St. Louis County wanting.
It's almost as much as the House budget, and there's half as many.
You check how many employees the tax committee has as compared to the House tax committee.
The meetings of the IRRB are never dull. Not only are there millions of dollars to play with, there are also partisan politics to contend with.
The meeting is adjourned. It's a better idea.
Clowns. That's what the man the governor just put in charge of the board called them after first seeing them in action. John Swift was so shocked by behavior like two board members storming out after one of their proposals failed to pass that he wrote a letter to the governor. The untimely departure of the board members forced that meeting to end.
Nothing else passes today. We don't have 8 votes for anything, including a project in Deerwood and some.
Many of those who've attended IRRB meetings say arguing, yelling, near fisticuffs are the norm.
I don't think anybody would say that it's been the smoothest, most efficient board that has ever operated.
Board members admit they can be loud and aggressive, but deny that the way they conduct business is a problem.
Probably there isn't a more cohesive group of legislators down here than the Iron Range delegation.
Speaker of the House Steve Swigum feels the way the board has operated is seriously hurting the Iron Range economy. He wants the board members to be replaced with Iron Range citizens appointed by the governor. His plan has passed in the House and is set for discussion in the Senate.
When you have politicians sitting on a board that sends out money in the form of this IOUs, parochialism, favors that may be asked or not asked, that's inappropriate.
Governor Jesse Ventura agrees, saying board members use IRRB money to buy votes within their districts.
But at times it was like a campaign finance chest, where politicians can do something with it and then run and crow to all their constituents, look what I got accomplished.
But board members say having elected officials on the board ensures that taxpayers get what they want.
And if they don't like the decisions I make, then they will recall my authority real fast.
The beauty of the board is that we're elected officials. People have actually voted for us to be there.
The IRRB's multi-million-dollar budget comes from taxes on taconite production. The fund was created to stimulate the range economy as a whole, but many say the system is a setup for infighting, with each lawmaker fighting only for his specific district. My understanding of the IRRB is that your mission is to enhance the economy and improve business on the Iron Range, not I want it in my district, you want it in your district, you want it in yours, and so on. Am I wrong?
I represent the Iron Range and I do things for the entire Iron Range. But when your district is dying, and
that you have legislators representing their districts, number one, which is what they're supposed to do.
But it's that parochial view that's led to board members fighting over projects and putting personal agendas ahead of the good of the Iron Range as a whole. Many say that infighting has cost the Iron Range hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars. At IRRB headquarters in Eveleth, Barbara Riles, News 6. The IRRB, as it's known, is a powerful agency. Board members distribute about $30 million a year for Iron Range projects. The board approves grants and low-cost loans to help diversify range economy. Some great projects have been funded by the agency, like the world-class golf course and resort at Giants Ridge and the recent expansion of Minnesota Twist Drill in Chisholm. But the governor has charged that board members, who are also lawmakers, control the money to sway voters, and has said if challenged, the system would not stand up in court.
You know, there is a conflict of interest that a lot of legal scholars have stated is very clear here, and if it's taken to court, I think you could see the IRRB face a dramatic change.
So far, that legal challenge hasn't happened, but House Speaker Steve Swigum is working hard to change the board through the legislature.
When we look and see how the board has operated or not operated over the past years with some degree of provincialism, some degree of parochialism, some real power politics, it just seems appropriate that the politicians not serve on the board.
Former commissioner of the Iron Range Board, Jim Gustafson, agrees, saying a change in the system is critical for the good of the range. He says infighting among the lawmakers on the board is embarrassing and has consistently driven business away from the range.
Look at is total chaos, total counterproductive, and a total mess. Of course, the problem with a thing like this, you never know how many deals you lost.
Gustafson says the problem stems from the fact that each lawmaker fights only for his own district, sometimes killing a project just because it would have gone to another part of the range. The story of Marvin Windows seems to bear that out. 2 years ago, the Warroad-based manufacturing company was considering opening a factory in Cohasset in the southwestern corner of the range. Marvin Windows' chief executive officer, Jake Marvin, clearly told me that he had decided to build his plant here in Cohasset and employ 500 or more people in high-paying jobs. But shortly after making the decision to move to Cohasset, Jake Marvin says he got a call from Representative Tom Rukavina, who told him in no uncertain terms that if he didn't build the plant in Rukavina's district, Rukavina would kill the deal. Marvin said that call was so rude and distasteful to him that he immediately changed his mind. In his words, the call was death for any plans he had for the Iron Range. Shortly thereafter, he chose to build the plant in Grafton, North Dakota. That plant is open now and employs nearly 500 people. Grafton business people say it's been an incredible economic shot in the arm for their entire region.
Oh, it's been terrific this year. We had a lot of new people coming in town, and Marvin's really helped us a lot.
Representative Rukavina admits making that call, but says he was just doing his job as a representative for his constituents.
Well, I wanted the last big shot put where our kids, my kids from the school districts I represented and that contributed the wealth, could stay.
But what about Governor Ventura's charge that board members use IRRB money to essentially buy votes? Well, we couldn't substantiate that, but former IRRB Commissioner Jim Gustafson says it is a fact that some board members put their personal interests ahead of voter needs. He says Representative Tom Bach, who is the business agent for the Carpenters Union, has killed projects simply because they don't use union labor. Bach admits he fights to make sure projects pay prevailing wage, which is generally union scale, but he says he does it for the good of range workers.
Because I look at part of my role on the IRRB, ensuring that the dollars that we spend, that we do whatever we can to make sure the local workers are employed.
But Gustafson says Bach's tough union stance has killed a number of deals and driven prospective business people to choose places other than the range.
It's implicit in that you set your personal job and your personal things aside and are involved in the bigger question.
Governor Ventura and Speaker Swigum say it's issues like these that are driving them to seek a change in the way the board operates. Barbara Riles, News 6.
Okay. How did you feel, Samantha, when you were talking with Mom and Dad about the incident and what had happened?
14-year-old Samantha Coopers is getting a second shot at a fresh start. She skipped school and got caught up with the wrong crowd.
They took us to their cars and they made a big, huge scene. There were 4 police cars.
Just recently, police picked up Samantha and several other teens for alcohol possession and consumption. The first-time offenders trying to hammer out her problems in a one-on-one diversion session with her mom and counselors.
So when a child gets picked up for curfew, for consumption of alcohol, for truancy, for shoplifting, any of those things, we're a spot the officer can bring that child.
But this isn't just a drop-off site. The Juvenile Assessment Center is an alternative to the court system, which some find fault with.
There's a lot of people that are frustrated because the consequences aren't meaningful enough, or it takes 2 months to get to court, and by the time you get there, you forgot why you're there.
Counselors say that's why many teens continue along rocky paths that eventually lead to more dangerous behaviors, like last month's Columbine shooting when 2 teens shot and killed a teacher and several classmates. The center reaches out to troubled youths before it's too late.
If you think it's impossible for your child to get wrapped up in unhealthy behavior, take a look at this color-coded tracking map. It shows a type of offense and location. Directors here say the majority of crimes like shoplifting and alcohol and drug use happen right after school.
And the location of those crimes seems to be near shopping areas, popular after-school hangout spots for kids. Directors handled almost 400 cases since last June. Of those, 336 youths received citations. Samantha's mother is happy her daughter is one of those 336 getting a chance to make a change in her life.
I think that this is a very, very good thing for people to go through, especially if they don't understand why their kids are doing what they're doing.
It's better than sitting in court. I'd rather talk to a counselor than a judge.
Counselors can't make a difference in every child's life, but they can try.
And then if they can leave here knowing that they have other options when they find themselves in a situation, and then being able to have the courage to leave a setting that is not healthy for them.
In Duluth, Corrine Winter, News 6.
I talked to her last week. She's like, "Can we do it this week?" And I was like,
and farmers, and we were successful. We got the message. The message from the voters was that they wanted us to put aside partisan politics, roll up your sleeves, work together, and improve this state for all Minnesotans.
Taconite is critical for our area. What we did in higher education and K through 12, because we have declining enrollments, a declining population in our part of the state. So the issues that were passed in this year's bill are very critical for the growth and the continuing progress of northeastern Minnesota.
This here down this hallway would be the chemical dependency unit.
Rachel Wickstrom has seen her share of methamphetamine users within these walls, from kids as young as 12 years old to the elderly.
It absolutely bankrupts you in every area. It bankrupts you emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually.
She ought to know. Wickstrom, a former meth user, abused the drug for years. The high helped replace her feelings of insecurity. Wickstrom's wake-up call came after coming close to death.
Like I said, methamphetamine gives you that sense of a well-being, that good feeling initially, but it will turn on you and it will destroy you.
Now this drug counselor is reaching out to youths in trouble, the younger ones who are easy targets because of the drug's availability. It's a homemade drug made from common household items.
Put the pseudoephedrine in a cooking dish. Then they'll add a metal.
The law enforcement community is still learning about this drug making its way into towns across the Northland.
The number of meth cases submitted for analysis to the state crime lab increased from 42 cases in 1996 to 77 in 1997 to 112 cases in 1998.
Their study also shows several counties near the Minnesota borders have encountered increased problems with meth sales and abuse. While the effects of methamphetamine use can be devastating, counselors say it's never too late to get help, and it all starts right here in these rooms with one-on-one and group therapy. But breaking through psychological boundaries like delusions and denial aren't easy. Rachel Wickstrom learned that tough lesson from her son.
He was 20 years old. And since then, he's had his 21st birthday.
There'll be no more birthday celebrations for Zachary. He died last year after bouncing in and out of rehab centers in his uphill battle with drug use.
He called me from a street corner, and he had everything was gone that he had, and that's how fast and debilitating drug addiction is. He had smoked it all gone within weeks.
Wickstrom says her son and even her own experiences as a former meth user hits home the message to young users about the life she lost and the life she almost lost to drugs.
And since then,
Corrine Winter, News 6.
From the NBC News Archives and MSNBC, this is a Time and Again 2000 Millennium Minute with Jane Pauley.
Jacqueline Kennedy was a popular First Lady. After President Kennedy's death, her strength and dignity inspired the country. She remained an object of fascination, and in 1994, her death was mourned by millions.
She brought a new elegance to the White House. She brought the arts and an air of American royalty. For millions of young women, Jackie was the ideal in style, dress, and manner. When her husband was murdered at her side, Jacqueline Kennedy became a heroine of Shakespearean proportions. We shared her shock. We were in awe of her dignity. Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis died as she lived, a very private passing of a woman who has been such a public part of our lives.
Time and Again 2000, brought to you by Schneiderman's Furniture.
Okay, so we're going to go show you our child-to-be's bedroom, future bedroom.
Melissa Cadlick and Dan Green have been married a year and a half. They bought this big old house on Woodland with dreams of filling it up with children. When that didn't happen, they set out to find a child.
This is going to be her room, and we've just started working on the decorating. I painted a couple of dressers, and this was my inspiration piece, this little bunny I got at a craft sale.
Fluent in the language, Melissa taught school for $100 a month in Duluth's sister city. She knows the consequences of the Russian government's failing attempts to shore up a faltering economy.
I mean, talking about $100 isn't much, but people aren't getting paid on time. They were behind 3 months, 4 months, 5 months.
Without pay, many Russian families struggle to buy food. Some are forced to do the unthinkable, to leave their children at orphanages. Across Russia, 3 million children abandoned.
This little bunny here, Dan and I picked out, and I'm going to bring it with me to Russia, and I'm going to leave it with her. And
Melissa is packing her bags for a trip to Russia. On a big gamble, there will be one little child for them to adopt.
I'm going over there, and my, so to speak, mission of this trip is for me to go and observe the orphanage and spend as much time there as I can, and pick out a child. I hope. This blanket, my very special best friend Pam made for our child. Plus Grandma Betty also crocheted one. That's in my mom's suitcase. Dan's mom crocheted a couple blankets. I don't know what they need there, so I got bibs, socks to keep their little feet warm. And we have all kinds of wonderful stuffed animals that we're
Petrozavodsk holds a special place in the hearts of Melissa and Dan. It's the city where they made an important promise.
I, of course, arranged a visit to go over there during the holiday season. And that's when I proposed to her, and she said yes.
Now, Melissa is hoping the magic of Petrozavodsk will work again.
Just the most important decision that we'll ever make here, and emotions are flying high now. They really are.
Waiting lists and Russian red tape aside, if a child is available, Melissa will have no problem finding the right words.
How would you say that in Russian?
I'm your mama and I love you. Я твоя мамочка, и я тебя люблю. Я вернусь. I'll return, I said.
She's going on this trip and I'm not, but I just know I've watched her do a lot of different things, and when she comes back, or before she comes back, I'm sure I'm going to get a phone call or an email that says, I have found our child.
Before her marriage to Dan a year and a half ago, Melissa taught school in Petrozavodsk. Dan proposed to her there, and when they decided to adopt a daughter, it seemed only natural to return to the city that means so much to them.
Just the most important decision that we'll ever make here, and emotions are flying high now. They really are.
Flying high because there are no promises they'll find a daughter or be allowed to adopt one.
You know, honestly, I think there aren't very many children at the orphanage who are adoptable, and I say that because Many of the kids don't have the parents' rights. Parents' rights aren't relinquished yet. And
one of the unadoptables is Christina, who's nearly 3 years old. The orphanage in Petrozavodsk is the only home she's ever known.
She had a hard time concentrating because she kept watching us. And anywhere you go in the streets of Russia, you see little girls with big bows that are bigger than their heads, and it's a very Russian thing. And there are about 15 kids that share that room in her group, about 12 to 15, and they all have their own little bed, and each bed has a little number on it, and she's in bed number 5.
Despite the tremendous odds against adopting a daughter like little Christina, Melissa soldiered on and held an emotional meeting with Olga, the fiercely protective director of the orphanage.
She tested me a little bit, oh yeah. And she wanted to know if I was sincere and coming from the heart.
Melissa passed the test and fate stepped in. While she was still in Russia, a court severed the parental ties that held not one but 2 children in limbo at the orphanage. As it turns out, one was Christina, the other her baby brother.
And she brought Christina in, and then after that took us to see Andre in his room. And I tell you, when they put him in my arms, the first time they put him in my arms, I knew what a mother felt like. It was it. He was my baby. And then I called him. I couldn't wait. I said, guess what? I said, there's not only one, but there's 2.
How could we not do this?
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's a brother and a sister, and we can't separate them. I couldn't.
The U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service has just signed off on the Russian adoptions. Melissa and Dan will travel to Russia in September to bring their little ones home.
It's like this big puzzle, and we are putting piece by piece, putting it together, and we're getting there, and we just kind of think we're in what month of pregnancy? 5th month of pregnancy, 4 months to go. And we'll have our babies.
Jesse the Body anymore. What do you want to be called now?
Governor.
Governor is good, huh?
I really don't fully understand why you all of a sudden, because you so choose public service or you become a person that's written about, that all of a sudden you have no rights anymore. That anyone can exploit you and they can make money off you. And you don't have any right to stop it.
Well, should be returned to the hard-working people that paid it in!
That's a good idea. Anyone else want an autograph from Jesse? Go right ahead.
You guys got any staging going on here?
I believe that helmet laws suck, and that they're a violation of our freedom. You wear one or not?
And they're doing this weekly show of me, and they're showing it during the sweeps week. So that's what it all boils down to, is the mighty dollar. And
Do you hear that? She goes, what? What? I said, do you hear that? And Laura goes, what? What? Silence. I says, enjoy it.
Long gone are the days of peace and quiet for Dennis Moe. On Sunday, Dennis's wife Lori gave birth to quadruplets.
Everything went smooth. I mean, it just, these people were top notch. They were right there. It was, one came out, next one came out, and it was just neat.
At 3:21 p.m., Derek was born by C-section. A minute later came Bryce. 2 minutes after Bryce, Naomi was delivered, and 60 seconds later, Tanya was born.
Little Tanya is the youngest addition to the Moe family. 5-year-old Trenton placed a little teddy bear in each one of his little brother and sister's hands.
She likes her big brother, huh?
Trenton and his older sister Shelley say they're happy to have 4 more in the Moe family.
You soak it in, you take each day as it comes, and you're grateful for how things turn out.
The babies were conceived through a process called in vitro fertilization. 3 fertilized eggs were inserted into Lori's uterus, giving the Moes a 1 in 3 chance to have a baby. Dennis was astounded when he found out that all 3 eggs took. On top of that, one of the eggs split into 2.
We knew exactly when we conceived right from the beginning. And we went in there, I think it was a month after, and he said, you got 1, you got 2, you got 3, and I'm going, what did you say? 3? And then he says, you got 4, and I'm going, then I had to sit down. Then.
Dennis says prayers and God were involved every step of the way.
There's some reason what this is for. I don't know what it is now, but I might find on this earth, and that's the first question I'm going to ask him when I get up there.
He also says it's his faith in God that's going to get him through at least 80 dirty diapers a day. In Duluth, Jody Grayson, News 6.
Of all the routes to the Ely area, the trip up Highway 2 and Highway 1 is most captivating. Scattered roadside vistas tug at a traveler's vision. You just can't help but stop here and there. For some, the rivers dissecting the roads are a final destination, absorbing a lazy afternoon. Arriving in Ely, the storefronts make it clear this is the gateway to something special, and less than 2 hours north of Duluth.
We get a lot of people that come up day trip from all over, like from Two Harbors, from the range cities, from St. Cloud, Minneapolis, just driving up, maybe stay one night and come back, do some hiking, take some bike trips, day paddles. Most all the outfitters will let you take a canoe out for a day.
Outfitters around Ely carry anything you need and just about anything you could want for a trip into the Boundary Waters. The area has inspired many an artist, and mixed in with the rough wilderness, you'll discover some fine arts. Photographer Jim Brandenburg's gallery is a showcase of area wildlife. You can expect to see a variety of creatures here, and the best place to see wolves is on the edge of town at the International Wolf Center. But of all the reasons to head north to the Ely area, there's one that's tastier than the rest: fish. And lots of them. It's a popular fishing and boating destination as well, and since there are more lakes than you could fish in a day, you're reasonably assured of having a spot to yourself a while. Andy Baker first visited the area with his father 30 years ago. He liked the place so much, he decided to move here from Ohio.
Because I love it. This is God's country. I started coming up in '69 and decided this is where I wanted to retire at.
If you visit Ely, be warned, you might not want to leave. But that's all right. There's plenty of wilderness and water for everyone to share. In Ely, Jason Rice, News 6.
Nerve-wracking. Well, yes, first-degree murder case is always very nerve-wracking. There's a lot at stake for everybody. My client, John Stephen Martin, was happy after we were finished, and I think it capped off a very fair, efficient trial, and I think both sides put forth a good, strong case, and now it's in the jury's hands.
sorry.
You could call it a premonition. Like butterflies in your stomach, something isn't quite right. It's that very feeling that Punky Nelson says kept her out of DJ's Conoco.
I applied for assistant manager position there, and I got the job. So I trained, and while I was training, I was still working at Moose Lake IGA. And a week before we were to open the new store, I was called into the Barnum office by one of the owners and the manager. And they told me that my hours would be changed.
Bad news for Punky. She was told she would not be working afternoons, but rather from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. Better pay and benefits, but overnight work in a lonely freeway convenience store wasn't worth the risk.
And I said, I'm sorry, I have to decline the job because I just didn't feel safe doing that. 1641.
And for good reason. Working at a convenience store can be dangerous. Just ask Anna Donahue, who works at the Barnum Little store.
Well, everybody does when you work in this environment. I've had people threaten to burn down my house.
Threats like that seem more real following the disappearance of Katie Poyer, who had little more than a blurred video to come to her aid. Recognizing the problem with security, other local business owners are doing more to keep their employees safe.
I don't feel less safe. One of the good things was within an hour and a half of the store knowing, the owners were right down here, and they were addressing the questions of what do you need to make you feel safer, and what would make you still want to work here and stuff. So every concern I've had has been addressed pretty promptly.
Even with heightened security, Punky says she could never again work at a convenience station because they could never offer a greater benefit than her current job.
I feel safe where I am now.
In Moose Lake, I'm Craig Zleeman for News 6.
Well, there's been a few articles of clothing that have been found. I don't know that they're related. Towels, shirts, things like that. I can't say that they're related, but we can't overlook it either.
Life in prison without the chance of parole until after 30 years. That's the sentence a judge handed down for the accused triggerman in the Paul Antonich murder. Last week, jurors found John Stephen Martin guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. Paul's family listened as the judge read a letter Martin wrote expressing his remorse, but the Antonich family wasn't touched.
You can have remorse if you get caught. Geez, I'm sorry because I got caught. I'm sorry because I got convicted. Maybe
or is he sorry that he did it? You don't
yeah, I mean, we don't have any gauge to measure.
What he's really sorry for.
Martin's attorney was surprised his client had written the letter, but says he's always known Martin's feelings of remorse.
Yes, I was. I didn't know about the letter. I'm glad he wrote it. I think those are true feelings that he's always expressed to me, that he had remorse for what happened to Paul Antonich.
Now the Antonich family says they're faced with moving on after the trial. Moving on in the midst of their daughter's graduation and the upcoming trial of the last of the men charged in the crime. They say it's a long road. They've only just begun. Corrine Winter, News 6.
If you get caught, geez, I'm sorry because I got caught. I'm sorry.
Investigators are chasing fresh leads in the Katie Poyer disappearance. This after the release of a second, more detailed sketch of the alleged abductor. The newly generated leads are coming from all over the state.
We do. Every time we do one of these and we've got some information on description of either people we're looking for or vehicles we're looking for, we see a real spike.
Search crews are now expanding their hunt to areas north and west of town. Members of the Minnesota National Guard are doing what hundreds of volunteers find difficult, effectively searching hard-to-get ground and water areas in little time.
It went real well. We've got called in early afternoon. We were up here approximately 4 p.m. yesterday afternoon, and And we had enough light to take us until about 8 o'clock, so we got a good 4 hours and covered a lot of ground.
Some Guard members have already identified a dozen key spots they say seemed out of the ordinary in the search and may contain key evidence, even the smallest, to link investigators to Katie. In Moose Lake, Corrine Winter, News 6.